Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's March 29th. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, and this is the level 1 presentation. So, and let me just move my light so you can see my face a little bit better. This is a lesson 10. We're about midway through the semester, and this is a very good entry point for anyone that wants to jump on board, has been kind of looking at videos or kind of wondering, like, what is this all about? I'm going to start with some recap in level 1, and in level 2, I'm going to get into the advanced understanding of how energy actually flows around this shape and what the significance of that is. And I'm happy to say I have some animations prepared for this. So these are animations where I worked with a professional animator. I drew like the diagrams that were the basis for it and hieroglyphics of how I wanted things to look. And then the animator actually had all of the equipment and the software to bring that vision to life. So it's really quite wonderful. And I think I mentioned before, like that Merkaba animation that I did, David Lear has been a wonderful facilitator and supporter of this. So yeah, he also helped me with this project to do the transferring of information back and forth between myself and the animator, because I'm understanding that as much as I can see it very clearly up here, and I can describe it with flapping moving mouth parts and draw a bunch of diagrams, being able to see it like in pictures, I think is even more powerful and profound. So level 1, what I'm going to do is start off with building the dimensions. I've talked about this before, but it's good to like reiterate and build on that foundation. Like when I practice a song, I don't think like, oh, I played it once, there I have it perfectly integrated in my mind. I think I should practice it a couple of times. I should go over it many days. Oh, Beth is saying Merkaba worked. I love hearing people's individual stories about utilizing the Merkaba. Actually, that was really wonderful. And you can tell me in the chat, and and I'll be sure to give everybody an opportunity in this recording to share what they would like to share with their personal experiences. One person wrote to me and they said that they had a challenge with their bank and they put the Merkaba around that situation, and then they went to the branch manager and everything worked out. It's amazing how it can energetically dissolve difficulties, especially social difficulties, not necessarily, whatever. It's not necessarily like you have to transform the laws of physics, even though that's possible too, but like, just like, to clear up whatever challenges. So yeah, I love hearing people's stories about how the Merkaba can be effective. So let's start off with grabbing my little magic wand here. And I want to talk about, because Bola, jumping around too much, I want to talk about building the dimensions, because I want to talk about what exactly I mean when I say that we take this basic double torus shape and add an additional dimension and add an additional degree of freedom in order to transform into the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And also, why does this matter? Or why does this matter? Why should I learn all of this? And the answer is just ingesting new ideas transforms the behavior of your DNA. So just learning about how these movements happen helps you to transform your DNA. But then, as I tell you, like when I actually do the dance, I don't think like move my left foot, move my right foot, wiggle my eyelashes. It's not like that. It's a feeling. So all of this is about how to more and more perfectly embody that feeling and be able to essentially move into a higher dimensional space. And all of this is a leap of consciousness and a leap of perception. So last week, what I spoke about was the Merkaba, and at the very end, I spoke about how transforming that star tetrahedron shape into the octahedron is a leap of perception, just like when we look at a optical illusion. Let me bring up that optical illusion again, because it's a really good example. And make the funny squinty faces while I scroll. This old one right over here. So famous optical illusion, where if you look at it one way, it can be an old woman wearing a babushka. If you look at it another way, it's a young woman, mostly in profile with a feathered hat. And it's the same exact lines. The lines don't move. What changes is your perception. What flip-flops between those two images is the way that you are looking at it. So when we do this transformation from basic torus shape into Flying Rainbow Lasagna shape, it's a transformation involving perception. And perception has to do with consciousness and training, like the way we are trained to look at the world. So I also spoke about that last week when I talked about perspective, that before the invention of one-point perspective on a flat canvas, that people looked at something that was flat as just like a barrier, just a screen, not something that you look through. We are now culturally so indoctrinated and used to looking through a flat surface as if it's a window that we don't even think about. And little babies are taught this from infancy. But we, you know, when we look at a painting, we're like, oh, look, that's going off into the distance. If I look at a flat television screen, I say like, oh, look, that's stuff that's going off into the distance. We're used to that. It's not revolutionary to us because we've been trained over hundreds of years to use our perception in this way. So now we're getting to the point of having a new tool. Like when perspective was invented, it was magic. It was a magical way to create a world on a flat piece of paper, a three-dimensional rendered world on a flat piece of paper or painting. And in the same way, when you look at something that's flat, you, the observer, have to add in that additional dimension to make it look real. This is what we're getting at when we're talking about Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Now, that you as the observer basically are adding the additional dimension with your perception, and that additional dimension has to do with perception of time. Now, I'm going to just press pause on all of that, put all of that to the side, digest. We're having a new course. The new course is called zoetrope. What is a zoetrope? And let me just make sure that everybody's muted. Let me go to the drawing screen. Here we go. First, I'll write out what it is and find a color that's a good color. Zoetrope, it means wheel of life. And this is old school animation. I'm just checking my other screen over there to make sure it works properly. It was like a type of barrel that, you know, was like a cylinder like this, and it could spin around in this direction. And it had slits that were cut in the side that were at regular intervals. And this is like, you know, 500, 600, 700 years ago, maybe even, it's like a flip book, very ancient animation. What they would do is they would make a strip of paper like this that was the exact right length to be able to fit inside and line the inner portion of the barrel. And it was cut into, not cut, but divided rather, into individual cells, just like we do in animation. And then you can make something look like it's moving. Like you can have a little person with their arm like this, and then a little person with their arm like this, and it looks like it's going up, down, up, down, up, down, or a picture of a horse. The point is, they're static images. Each one of these little figures in here is a static image. And the magic of what was discovered in order to make this happen was that these individual static images could be blended together through a visual phenomenon that is known as persistence of vision. Let me lean extremely close and write this down. Cool. So this is not persistence of time, that's Salvador Dali painting with the melted clocks, but that seems rather apropos in this case. It is persistence of vision. This is the ocular phenomenon of perception. So basically, all of us, when we are looking at, or whatever, most of us that have two eyes and that have the system of perception, when we look at reality, what we're looking at is actually a series of individual still frames. And this is how, let me just drink some water. This is how videos and television and movies work. Hold on. So in old-fashioned films, you know, you've got, let me just make sure that you're muted, man. I just want to make sure that you don't have any feedback on the outside. There we go. Old-fashioned films, you know, you've got a long film strip like this, and individual frames of the picture are going by, and they go by at 26 frames per second. And if the individual frames flicker by at the correct rate, 26 frames per second, what happens is you don't see individual still frames. Your brain and your mind and your consciousness, which is not necessarily your brain or your mind, and your system of perception, which is how you interpret the world, blends together each one of these still frames to make it look like there's a smooth motion of an arm moving across the screen or a horse running or whatever it is. But we understand that they're all still images. So the point is, you as the perceiver add together the integument that ties together moment to moment. We understand when we're watching a movie, and now there's digital technology, which is it's basically when you watch a digital TV or something like that, there's a refresh rate. That, like, these are lines of pixels that are going across the screen, and lines of pixels are refreshed over and over and over and over and over. So it's not an exact analogy in the same way that old-fashioned film is a really perfect analogy, or the old-fashioned zoetrope, because in those cases there's like an entire chunk of reality. That's a little snapshot. And then the next, a quanta. When I say a chunk, I'm saying a quanta of reality, and then the next chunk, and then the next chunk. And that it is each one of us as master calculators. This is like, give yourself some credit. If you're looking around at a world that is filled with moving objects, you are doing incredibly complex calculations, not only about depth, like I've gone into the idea of duality, that we have I1 and I2, most of us do, and that allows us to do these complex calculations of how far away something is in the room and where it's, where it's situated in space and reality, that it's even more complex than that, that we're doing these complex calculations where, in one frame, a person's arms are up like this, and then in the next frame, their arms are pointed down like this. We are the being. We are that amazing rendering computer that is tying together all of the other movements in between those two positions. We tie it together. We're making that happen. So that's the whole idea of this Zoe trope, wheel of life. The idea that we are, we're looking at a series of chunks of time. And this is, I'm not a scientist, but not of this science of this time and place, but what scientists of this time and place describe as the Planck length. So the Planck length, that's from Max Planck. And if we were saying, like, this is a timeline over here, how tiny can we chop up a piece of time and still call it a piece of time? Like if this was a piece of cake over here, how tiny could we make a little crumb of cake and chop it into a little tiny molecule before it's no longer considered an actual piece of cake? It's just like, a tiny sliver of reality. So that's the idea of the Planck length, like the tiniest little sliver of time that you can take and still have it be time is the Planck length. And we are looking at reality that is made of all of these static chunks that are separated at the Planck length, and that it is our perception that is tying these all together. So in the biological realm, it's persistence of vision, and that is causing us to tie together, snapshots of reality. But this also has to do with behavior of our DNA. Here, I'll go back to my face. Behavior of our DNA, because I've drawn this before, the way that we have individual train cars of reality, and that those are each static moments. And then the little connectors between each of the train cars of reality is, and put down my sculpture and my thing, the dance of your DNA. That is what literally makes your consciousness transfer from one version of yourself to the next version of yourself. So if we just enter this meeting, it's like 3:15 p.m. And if it is now, whatever, 3:19, however many minutes have gone by, we have all jumped our consciousness many, many, many times, from the body of 3:15 to that of 3:16, 3:17, 3:18. And we'll keep on doing this jumping motion for the amount of time that we are able to maintain our metabolism known as life and be alive in the time field. When you can no longer do that jumping from moment to moment, that is called being dead. So if this is the first time that you're in this class, and if you don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about the time vortex, I'm talking about a quadrant of this overall shape, and we'll get into how this shape is built. But with this quadrant down here, when I draw this little time vortex down here, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about basically the map of death, or the structure of life and death. That I draw this all the time in this class. So let's make a big highlighted, this is the membrane of death. And I'm making it super exaggerated, like it's big and fat, but it's not big and fat. And that all of these blue timelines, this is all life. The area that is highlighted in light blue is all life. And all of those light blue timelines terminate on the membrane of death along here. They can't go any further. And also, if you're new to this, because I said this is a good jumping in point, you understand that that's my little shorthand diagram, that what's really happening in reality, and we'll get into this more in level 2, is about the flow of energy is actually a spiral around a 3-dimensional vortex shape. So I made it simplified into this 2-dimensional shape so that I could show the terminations more easily, but you understand that it all spirals upward around a 3-dimensional shape. So this is, again, understanding, well, the rate at which you move through time, and then when you can no longer move through time, you have hit that boundary that is this membrane that we would call the membrane of death. That boundary matters because when we do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, we rearrange that boundary, drinking. That boundary is comprised of the last moments of your life, the final calculations. Again, I say you're calculating when you're looking at the world and you're creating a three-dimensional space that has moving objects in it. That's an amazing calculator. You are. You are also an amazing quantum calculator. You are exploring all of these various different timelines that you could possibilities and probabilities that you can be on, and you're doing the inner calculations. And if you hit the membrane of death, you found out, oh, that's not the right series of calculations, or you calculated that that's not an effective pathway through time. And what we are doing as quantum, I like to say this is our quantum laboratory. So we are quantum explorers using our laboratories here. We're doing those calculations every moment. So we have multiple different opportunities, multiple different timelines within one incarnation or one life experience, and they're actually concurrent to many other life experiences. And what we're constantly doing is calculating. We're calculating the route out of here. And that in that drawing that I just did is that central core timeline. So we are doing this calculation for the how to get out of here route. And that's the one that starts down here and goes, I make that infinity symbol because it keeps on going endlessly. So we do all of this rigmarole calculation, and same from the other side too, because that's a cross section, just to be able to find this is the one that exits through this little tiny wormhole over here. But that's not how everything was supposed to be. So I'll do a brief wrap on the, we were not supposed to have to explore every single possible wrong note on the piano before we find the right note, or do all these iterations, endless iterations, which is why I understand that many people feel so constrained, trapped, and frustrated here. This goes now to the limitations of DNA. So we were supposed to be able to have our higher faculties activated, never lose our connection to the higher dimensional, less dense realms, or what we would call divine intelligence, the organizing principle that tells you, like a conductor, go now, play this note now, and then you'll sound good in the music. And the music is the music of life. We were not supposed to be cut off from that, but we've been genetically degraded. So all of this is about how to tune up the instrument and no longer be genetically degraded, how to make this better. So that's good backstory. Let me do building the dimensions, and then I'll draw lots of pictures about, and I'm checking my time, about your DNA and how Flying Rainbow Lasagne fits with your DNA. So building the dimensions. Go into the whiteboard. We start off with the 0th dimension. Yes, if you have followed the entire series, or if you've been in any of the other classes, any other semesters, this is review, but it's very worthy review. So we start off with the 0th dimension. I'm just making a big fat dot, and it's called the 0th dimension not because it is worthless. When I first did presentations about this, and people would be like, oh, 0, so it's like worth nothing. And I had to say to people, no, it's 0 mean it's everything, it's infinity. But what I should do is I should draw a little infinity symbol up here, because that is everything. It's literally the presence of everything. And when I show you this, here, let me just put this, drink water. When I show you this yellow sculpture, I'll hold it up close to the camera so you can see in my little tiny thumbnail. This 0th dimension is that central convergence point. But it's this little dot is what it is before it expands outward and begins this energy flow in this. And that energy flow around that yellow sculpture has everything to do with creating Flying Rainbow Lasagne. So stick with me. So this is like the seed. It's like before it actually blossoms forward into anything. It's the presence of everything. Literally, all thought, all energy, all consciousness, all life. Anything that has ever existed or will, any possibility or probability, it all exists there. It is the literal epitome of everythingness. The 0th dimension, it's not worth nothing because it's 0. It's everything. It's worth everything. And the most amazing thing that ever happened was that this point of consciousness at one point had to think, what would happen if there was a little piece of me that wasn't here with me? Let's make another little dot out here. As soon as that thought occurs, and that dot can be any place. It can be there, it can be there, it can be there, it can be there, it can be here, it can be here, it can be here. As it just has to be one random arbitrary dot someplace other than the 0th dimension. That is the most amazing thing that ever happened, because that allowed for the beginning of building other dimensions. So we just connect those 2 dots with a series of individual dots. I think I make my screen shake a little when I do that. And then what we have is the 1st dimension. That's the 1st dimension. It's the 1st dimension because it only takes one piece of information to describe the position of a point on that line. It's like, where is something? We only need one little, let's say, address for where, where something is located. With the 0th dimension, we don't need any address because everybody lives there. This is a house, the house of infinity, where everybody lives. You don't have to put any address on your mail. It all goes to infinity because that central convergence point of that yellow sculpture here, it's like this. That's a cross section of that sculpture, right? Like you've got one vortex like that, one like that. That's the place where everything crosses. Here, I'll make a different color so you can see what I'm talking about. Wait, I have a green. Always going around and around and around, endlessly around and around and around. And I'm just doing it in 2 dimensions, but it also goes this way and this way and this way and this way. It's constantly, energy is flowing through there. It's the tor of the torus, T-O-R, the central, it's the donut hole. The donut hole of the donut is the most special magical place that exists. It's the overlappingness of everything. So the overlappingness of everything had to at one point think, what if this stuff that's here with me wasn't here with me and it was someplace else, and then it became the 1st dimension. And then that leap, that was just the most amazing thing that ever happened. But once that happened, then all you had to do was continue reproducing that leap, which was basically at 90 degrees. So, here's 90 degrees to the 0th dimension. Now let's say what's 90 degrees to the 1st dimension? Whoop, that's in this direction. We draw this all the time in high school geometry. That is 90 degrees, that blue line is 90 degrees to the purple line. And then what we have is the 2nd dimension. So that is analogous to if I lined up many, many lines next to each other, then what we would get is the 2nd dimension, which is a flat plane. And I'll use the magic of perspective to draw this as a flat plane. So we are now interpreting that. When you're looking at that, you're not like, wow, that's a weird looking trapezoid. You're looking at that like, wow, that's a piece of paper that's slightly on angle, right? And that's the 2nd dimension. It's the 2nd dimension because it requires 2 pieces of information to determine where it is the X and the Y. There's, we've got this zone and we've got this zone, and we have to say 2 pieces of information to say, where's that X on there? And then what is 90 degrees from the 2nd dimension? It's the 3rd dimension. This is easy because we live in the 3rd dimension. And so this is also like simple stuff that we know from a long time ago, Aurora. So that would be like stacking up many, many flat pieces of paper on top of each other. Or we could think of them as playing cards, flat, like pieces of cardboard, whatever. You can see I'm putting these planes together until we stack them up, stack them up, stack them up. And then what we get is a cube. That's just like a very not expertly drawn cube, but since we are so good at understanding the 3rd dimension, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like you see, bam, that's a cube. Here, I'll draw a better one so that you can see what I'm talking about. So once again, through the magic of perspective, you're looking at that little shape that I just drew as a box, a cube. And we're all experts at cubes and living in cubes. Oh my goodness, someone is texting me or something. Oh my goodness, hold on one moment because I have to go sign for a package. I'm so sorry to have to do this. Hold on one moment, everyone. My utter apologies. Sorry about that. They said that I had to go sign at the front door, but maybe it's not at this right moment. But it was for a piece of equipment that I don't want to be sitting on the front porch. Okay, hold on a minute. Let me drink some water. We live in 3-dimensional cubes. This is the room that we live in, a box, a house. We're experts at the 3rd dimension. So whenever I would tell people about this in my visiting my studio, I'd say, hey, point to the 2nd dimension, point to the 3rd dimension. Then I'd say, hey, point to the 4th dimension. And that's a tough one because at this point, no one wears a watch anymore. Everyone has cell phones. But in the old days, if you had a watch or a clock on the wall, that would be the only way that you could effectively point to the 4th dimension, because the 4th dimension is not something that we can see with our eyes easily. But as I was saying before, we use the persistence of vision in order to add in the integument, the 4th dimension. So the 4th dimension is many, many boxes tied together like train cars. Now I'm just going to draw very rough and ready boxes, boxes, boxes like this. All right. That's the 4th dimension. We essentially have a timeline beginning over here and moving in this direction over here, just like what I was drawing with the time vortex. And each one of these boxes, these 3-dimensional boxes that I'm circling, I'm so sorry to be distracted by this package that they're saying. I think it's okay, guys. I don't think that it's there right now. I'm sorry about that. Each one of these moments of time, each one of these boxes is a moment of time. And once again, it is our perception that ties us together from moment to moment, and the dance of our DNA. Let's get some little DNA kind of colors going here. I guess pink, that's a good DNA color. These are now little dancing squiggles of DNA that are tying together train car of reality to train car of reality. This is the fourth dimension. One long train track or one long French bread that ties together moment to moment at the Planck length. But we don't have to have just one possibility, just one timeline. Now let's see if I can figure out how to erase. I want to just erase this stuff over here. Oh, look, it's working. Ah, wonderful. What if we have something that is, let me go back to the pen. We want something that is 90 degrees to the fourth dimension. What is 90 degrees to the fourth dimension? Well, if this is a line heading in this direction, that's just like the second dimension. So what we do is we line up many lines, many timelines. Now imagine this is like a train station, and that each one of these is, you know, the origin at the station, and then these are all of the events of time moving forward in this direction. Many, many, many trains lined up in this at the train station, or, you know, at this higher dimensional world. That's the fifth dimension. What I just drew was a time plane. Here, look, through the magic of perspective, we now look at that as a flat plane that is made of many, many timelines. Now, this analogy is a loose analogy because, you know, I just drew for you that time vortex. And I said, here's my little cross-section simplification of it, but we understand that it is actually a three-dimensional vortex that has energy that spirals around it. So you understand that what I'm teaching you with this time plane, this is an analogy because it's hard to understand time. It's hard to have a grasp on it. It's not actually built of lines and cubes. It's actually built of exactly what I've got behind me in my pants, what I'm wearing on my art vest over here, my little shirt. It's made out of curvilinear forms, but in order to easily display this to other people, I'm using this, you know, line and box analogy. So we just made a time plane, and that's like a flat piece of paper or like a flat piece of fabric. You can think of this like a tapestry. At this point, this is like a tapestry, because let me change colors here. You have all these different events, and this is going to go down to rearranging the skin of the torus, okay? Just remember that I'm telling you this. Rearranging the skin of the torus means that we are flying rainbow lasagna here. Flying rainbow lasagnaing with the skin of the torus means that we are able to interconnect these different events. They used to be discrete. They used to be not interconnected. And it's like if you say you have a flat piece of paper. Here's a flat piece of paper, and it's not folded up. But we can like fold it up. I'm making dots over here. Like, you know, you can fold it up into the next highest dimension. You can turn it into origami. You can turn it into a little crane or a little owl or whatever that you can make, a frog out of origami. So with this, what you've got with time over here, let me erase that. Boom. What you've got with time over here, you've got a flat piece of paper. That's like saying it is what it is. It's just this set of events, this musical score, these combinations of possibilities. But once you realize that you can fold the fabric of time, space, and consciousness with a tool called the Flying Rainbow Lasagne, you can begin to have these possibilities interact in new and fun combinations. You can take a little bit, let's get a different color. You can take a little bit of this moment possibility over here, and you can make it touch on this moment over here, because you're folding the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. So first of all, we just established, because lots of people use these terms so in a very loosey-goosey way, the fourth dimension, the fifth dimension, like it's the age of Aquarius, that we got to be cool about and specific about the way that we are talking about higher dimensional realms. So the fourth dimension would be considered a timeline. One, like my pinky, I have one pinky sticking up, that is one timeline. But the fifth dimension would be many, many timelines laid out next to each other, like my hand is made out of many, many fingers laid out next to each other. And these are potentials. And also when I talk about the fifth dimension and higher, then we're getting into the realm that I would call like the bakery. So it's the fourth dimension. This is like a French bread. Here's a long, skinny French bread that I just highlighted in blue. And the constituent elements to make that bread are flour and yeast and water. And the fifth dimension would be considered the realm of pure possibilities, where the water and the sugar and the everything exist, but they are not yet baked into bread. And it is really the ovens of your eyes, the perception of your eyes as a quantum observer that condenses, coalesces these abstract waveforms into actual experiences that can be quote unquote eaten as bread. So when, again, I'm using these as analogies, you think the fifth dimension, like, oh, Aurora said it's these timelines, the train station, all these different possibilities and all of that. It is that, but I don't want you to be too stuck into the being a literal interpretation of this, which is really a poetic analogy. The fifth dimension is a realm of uncollapsed waveforms. It's a realm of pure potential. So again, fifth dimensional and higher beings, they're abstractions. They're not French breads. They are the possibility for French breads. Beth is saying more like soup. Yes, that is exactly right. It is a soup. It's a sea of possibilities. I say this all the time. And what we're doing with our journey is trying to accrete enough light. Here, wait, I'll go back to my face. We're trying to accrete enough light to become coherent, the way that laser beams are coherent, and they don't disperse. The light from my light bulb is not coherent. It disperses. It goes all over, hither, thither, and yon. It goes a couple of feet. But a laser light is coherent. It's completely focused, and it goes forward endlessly unless it is acted upon, by some external influence. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create our non-physical body, our structured consciousness, to be structured as a coherent form, because it's a ocean of consciousness. It's a sea of uncollapsed waveforms and possibilities and probabilities. When you're swimming through that ocean, you have to be very like stuck together. You have to be very well formed in order to not get just blown away by a tidal wave, just swamped over. There's giant ocean currents, and the currents are currents of possibilities. So when I said before, matter, the mother, the material realm, that we're gestating ourselves in this material flesh format so that we can become experts and master the realm, and then be able to travel with more freedom. That's the whole point. Like, you don't just be like, here, you're a little tiny baby infant, jump into the giant ocean of consciousness, like, sink or swim. Like, you don't have to do that. You can learn how to do your dog paddles, and you can practice and get better. And then when you're ready, you can go out into the open ocean of pure consciousness. And that's what we're doing. We're learning how to flying rainbow lasagna with our DNA while we're here drinking water. While we're here in this physical realm, while we're relatively protected by the being submerged in the physical realm. Okay, don't worry. This is like, I'm really going somewhere with this. So we did the fifth dimension, which is like the realm of pure potential. Wait, I'm pressing the wrong buttons here as I'm trying to talk. Fifth dimension as the realm of pure potential. And I also drew that as being like a time tapestry. This here's a flat piece of fabric, and that's the fifth dimension. And we're doing the same procedure over and over. We're stacking up cards. So the sixth dimension would be if we stacked up many time tapestries on top of each other to some different colors. So you know what I'm talking about? Just like we stacked up layers of the second dimension to make the third dimension, now we stacked up layers of the fifth dimension to make the sixth dimension, and we just made a time cube. And I know it's a time rectangle, but you know what I'm talking about here. It's time cube. And of course, it's filled with all of these individuated moments. That's a whole grid on many, many levels. So the important thing to visualize here, if we have these different time tapestries that are like layers of possibilities and probabilities, when they are structured together like these many layers of fabric or many layers of tapestry, we can have one thread that goes through all of these different layers, and then comes up here, and then goes through all of these different layers, and then comes over here and goes through all of these different layers. It is a higher dimensional understanding of the interconnectedness of events, all right? And those events also change over time. So just like we had that little train cars, in this train car, the guy's arm is sticking up, and in this train car, the guy's arm is pointing down. There's a difference between these two train cars. Well, I'm now going to draw the seventh dimension, which is filled with cubes of time. This was one time cube. That was the sixth dimension. Here's a cube of time, and another 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 cube of time. And they're all connected together by integument, just like the other ones were. And that makes a line again. And so again, there's I can recommend an excellent video series that's really worthwhile that was made by Rob Bryanton that is called Imagining the 10 Dimensions. And he uses just like the math science approach, and it's very worthy, it's very worthwhile looking into. Like, I'm adding more of the idea of consciousness into this. It's like, if you want to, he's got excellent graphics and animations that really depict this. Sarah Jane is saying fractals. That is exactly right. The idea of a fractal is self-similar objects that are nested within each other, within themselves. So for example, like a fractal would be if I took a picture of myself and put it on a t-shirt that had on it a picture of myself wearing a picture of myself on a t-shirt with a picture of myself on a t-shirt, like a down, 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 nested like Russian dolls. So this is what we're doing. This is the way that reality is structured. So we made a line out of many, many cubes over here. And then what's the next thing? You guys are all really super smart. I know that you know the next thing is to line up many, many lines of that, just like at the 5th dimensional train station, except now it's the 8th dimensional, much, much higher dimensional train station. And we just made a plane of time at that higher dimensional train station of the 8th dimension. And then we stack up many of those flat planes again to make another time cube. We keep on going and keep on going. It's literally something that we can do endlessly. I'm not just giving this to you, giving this information to you, like just to like benumb you with complexity. That's not the idea, but the idea is for us to establish rules of language. Yes, Pedro's saying like when you stand between two mirrors, that's exactly like what we're talking about. And that's also a really good analogy because we have these two mirrors and you have two boundaries, but you can have an infinite amount of bouncing back and forth between those two boundaries. And that is very much what we are experiencing in the movement of time. We're experiencing endless movement between 2 points or between 1 point. So let's talk about the flow of energy around this shape, then I want to get into DNA. So wait, I have already established that this central convergence point is the 0th dimension. And that what we've really got are all of these, they're bent timelines, they're circular, and energy is flowing in these figure 8 motions. So it flows, you know, all in these figure 8s around and back, around and back, around and back, but it also flows in spirals, like around in this way, inward, inward, inward towards the center, and then outward from the center back to the periphery, and then back to the center, and then outward towards the periphery. So in this time and place, many people are like, oh no, the cube of Saturn. Oh no, I'm trapped and I'm being recycled to the moon. Oh no, the torus is an endless spiral of torture. No, no, no. It's not supposed to be an endless spiral of torture. This is actually supposed to be a perfectly balanced experience, and we're never supposed to have to hit those membranes of death. So what we're supposed to be able to do is go directly up that central core timeline, have our life experiences be emanated from the 0th dimension out into physical reality, have the experience of returning to the 0th dimension, and then have another emanation, and then go back, emanation, and go back. And this also has everything to do with our relationship to the sun and the stars, that what we're supposed to be experiencing is an unbroken line of consciousness, where the sun emanates us as children of consciousness. So not only does the calcium in our bones, and you know, that came from a far ancient sun, solar explosion, star, nebula explosion, the creation of all the heavy metals and everything like that. Sorry, heavier elements, not heavy metals. The heavier elements, oh my God, I gotta get rid of that technification. In order to be able to make like calcium for our bones. That was from a previous star's explosion. But all the rest of the stuff that we have, our consciousness and our organic matter and life force energy, we have from the present living star. Stars have metabolism, stars have lifespans, stars don't just simply live forever, even though there are some stars that are so giant and will live for such a long time that stars of that size and magnitude have not died yet. In this version of this universe, like if we're about 13 billion years into this universe, those stars have a span of whatever, 28 billion. They can live for longer than we've currently been on this journey. So none of those stars have died yet, but they have the potential to die. That's the whole point. Stars have a metabolism. They send out and they receive, and they spend a certain amount of their time spent sending out energy, and then a certain amount of their time drawing energy in. And that part of that is our consciousness reflecting back to them. Like, you made me, you sent me out into the world, you gave me consciousness and ideas. P.S. All of my ideas come from the sun and the stars. I don't read them in a book. And the Flying Rainbow Lasagne is my own innovation, but the rest of what I know comes from the sun and the stars. Like I can take credit for it if I say I dilate my identity to being the stars, because I am the stars, like we're all the stars. But as Aurora, it's like, that's the stars. And I learn all this stuff from like my teachers, and I'm a star person, and they flow through me. And this is it's just the way it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to be ever separated from the stars as our creators and inceptors of consciousness. It's supposed to be a real-time broadcast where you're like, wow, this is what it feels like to be in a body. Wow, this is what it feels like to be sitting here doing this stuff and, you know, flapping my moving mouth parts and having these experiences. And I broadcast that back to the sun and the stars. And it's supposed to be that way. But because of the genetic degradation for a very long time, when I say genetic degradation, I always do this, like being blocked out, no cell phone signal from Earth for about 10 or 20,000 years due to the genetic degradation. The solution is Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So now let's get into genes in Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So if this is, and I'm just going to draw this out. Oh, and I'll get to your questions. I absolutely promise I will. For a long time, I was doing this presentation. I was showing you, like, you've got your DNA together like this, like one twined together type of, like, you know, piece of yarn, and then it gets split apart or unzipped just like a zipper of your clothing. And then you've got DNA on one side like this and DNA on one side like this, and it's shaped kind of like a Y. But I really want to show this in a better way, in a more exact way, that when it splits apart, it creates these little circular areas. And those circular areas are where you do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So ordinarily, your DNA has dynamic behavior. It's not a flat static object. And in order for it to be effectively read by the RNA messengers, I've done this in previous classes, this is recap, it needs to be unzipped, it needs to be split apart. So, and I'll make the teeth in different colors. We've got pink teeth on one side, right? These are amino acids, and they're different combinations of amino acids. And then whatever, we've got, you know, green teeth on the other side. And these are the teeth of the zipper. And then usually they're zipped together, and that makes your genes stable. Your genes are supposed to be stable. Let me drink water here. Hold on a second. That's because if you had unstable genes, like if you just unzipped all of your genes, it would be like taking all of the perfectly arranged cards of your DNA and just throwing them up in the air, be like 52 pickup, like anything goes, randomness rules. And like then you might have whatever, your nose is on the side of your face. You'd look like a Picasso painting, like all of the arrangement of your body's cellular structure would be too disarranged to support life and consciousness. So on the one hand, we want to have structure. Structure is like following the musical score of the cosmos. What are we actually doing with our bodies? What are we actually supposed to be doing to stay alive with our bodies? And there's also innovation. And innovation can be considered mutation, but it's also like, it irks me when humans try to think like, oh, cancer is just a random mutation. Like cancer is not just a random mutation. Cancer is like a weaponization. It is a concerted effort to bring down the overarching organism. Random mutations are, you know, explorations of innovations in the DNA code, and something you should be able to do. So the whole point is, you can rearrange what your DNA is doing by inserting this shape that is called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And I told you I have my screen share all set up, extensively technological over here on the side here. And I have some animations that I worked with and that I got help facilitating so that I can show you what I'm talking about. So, and when I do, I'm imagining on a macroscopic level that I'm doing these dance movements, but I'm also doing these dance movements with my DNA on a subcellular level when I do this dance. So it is natural for your DNA to be split apart at times or unzipped at times in order for the RNA messengers, here, let's draw this is a little black RNA messenger, so that it can go along on this little track and read what the proteins are, and then make a copy, like a photocopy, the way that you would if you went into a special library. You couldn't take out the books themselves, but what you could do is you could take a photocopy of the books. That's what the RNA does. And then theoretically, your body's supposed to be like, oh, good, you're all done with that. Zip, zip, zip. Let's zip that back up. But you can do something else. What you can do is use the Flying Rainbow Lasagna as a type of genetic placeholder. Now let me get a red color here. You can place the Flying Rainbow Lasagna shape, and you can see this is the curly red edge, and then I'll draw purple going up this way, and this up here like this, and this down here like this. Very rough and ready, Flying Rainbow Lasagna shape. That is now, and it doesn't look like this, guys. It's an oscillation. It's an energetic oscillation. So I'm drawing the sculpture here. The sculpture is a physical object that is essentially representing like a song. The way that black dots on a scale, on a musical staff rather, can represent a melody, but that's the melody is an intangible thing. It's a song that is being played. The Flying Rainbow Lasagne is a song that is being played with your DNA. So it's not like you need to imagine that you have these little tiny candy colored, plastic objects in your DNA. That's not what you have to imagine. What you should imagine is that you've got a little dot, like this little dot over here that oscillates, that jumps up here and then jumps down here. And as it's doing so, it creates vortices. And now I'm going to get into the screen share to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Because when I say to you that it's got an eightfold pattern, well, let me go back to my face. Eightfold pattern, we'll count around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? It's an eightfold pattern. A lot of our music is in 4/4, so it's easy to do that counting. That is how that little dot jumps around. So now instead of more flapping of my moving mouth parts, I'm sorry, I'm going to be rude. I'm going to duck over here because I got my thing set up like on a little table over here. Hold on. I got to rearrange everything. And we'll go to screen share. Let me see if I got this right. Screen share, and we'll go to this. Oh, I think it's going to work, guys. It's going to be awesome. Okay, wait. Oh, okay. So first up, let me make this get in the right spot so you can actually see what I'm doing. And let me just ask everyone in the chat, can you just give me like a thumbs up or a yes if you can see that image correctly? Because I'm hoping that you can. Please tell me you can. Awesome, technology works, cool, great. So this is this wonderful animation. Let me put my thing so it's still on the computer. And let's show you what the actual movement of this looks like as it is jumping up and down and creating this wonderful oscillation. About a 1-minute video. Got it, everyone? Now I'll stop. Wait. You'll get a little bit of a spin. You'll see what I'm talking about. I'm gonna rewind. Let's rewind. You'll see more of what I'm talking about. Good. So we created this with this oscillating, jumping back and forth maneuver. The Flying Rainbow Lasagne is created, like, let's say this, starting off with this. Look, the purple dot just jumped to the top. Now the purple dot, wait, I'm moving forward. Just jump to the bottom, jump to the top. Jump to the bottom, keep going, jump to the top, jump to the bottom, jump to the top, jump to the bottom, top, bottom. We do this 8 times, and doing that 8 times gives you the basic Flying Rainbow Lasagne shape. Okay, wait, we'll keep it going and keep on walking. You can also see in this animation, here on this simplified sculpture, I just drew stripes, but the animation is way more accurate where you can see there are actual half cones that stick off. There are little, dimensional trumpet shapes that all nest together. So it's not just one long, smooth ski slope. Thank you so much. This is the culmination of a lot of people working together. As I said, I did the basic diagrams and the color palette and the hieroglyphics of how I wanted it to look on screen. And then a professional animator took my requests and manifested it according to my what I wanted. And all of this was facilitated by David Lear doing all the connecting me to the animator and being an intermediary is what I'm trying to say. Wait, let me do stop share. Okay, that worked awesome. I'm really happy. Hold on a second. I just need to drink a little bit more water, and then we'll get on to the other one that I want to show you too, because this also has to do with how we do the dance. Wait. I'm sorry, I'm so thirsty. I think you can tell because I get going on talking very, very, very fast, and I'm like, wait, I'm getting very thirsty here. It's like running a marathon, guys. I get very thirsty. Okay, all right. Oh, so she asked, no red. There's like it's like a magenta. I was going for a magenta color in there, kind of like not a fire engine red. It's more, and it has to do with light, additive light mixing. Let me drink. So in regular, if you're painting with paint, red is more of like a fire engine red. But if you're doing additive light mixing or the type of printing that has to do with overlapping layers of ink, red is actually magenta. So I was going for more of a magenta color. So when I drew that DNA, and you've got that circle of, so you've got DNA coming in on this side, it splits apart. The front part goes around this area of the sculpture. The back part goes around this area of the sculpture, and then the rest of the yarn comes out this side. This is made by the jumping up and down 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you don't have to just do it one time in one little area of your DNA. Let's draw it out for you, so that I want everyone to just like think in the most expansive way possible. That's what the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is all about. When I say it adds an additional degree of freedom, like imagine you've got, let me try this again. That's one of your little DNA strings that's doing the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance. And let's draw a little, here's a little lasagna in that as a placeholder, right? Now you've got, oh look, here's another string of DNA that's zipping apart and doing the Flying Rainbow Lasagna and rearranging itself. So then I'll get into exactly what does that mean when we are rearranging itself. But the whole point is, this little shape, unzip your DNA in an artistic fashion. This is all writing. These are all words. Where I'm making these dots here. Let me change to a different color here. Where I'm making these black dots. These are all words, and the words are the story of your life. When I said your DNA is the integument that connects you from moment to moment, we're literally talking about. I mean, it also contains information from your ancestors and events that happened to them, and also potentials for the future. But just focus on your own, present moment existence. That all of these are words that add up to the story of your life. And that what you're able to do when you put this DNA genetic placeholder here is rearrange those words. Maybe those words say something like, and then she, grew to be age 52 and developed a horrible tumor and died. And you're like, wait a minute, I don't like that story. I don't like those words in that story. I want to rearrange those words. I can Flying Rainbow Lasagna and rearrange that narrative story, and I can have it say, grew to be age 52 and then dismantled a horrible, nasty tumor and continued to live for 52 more years. Like, this is all about transforming the narrative structure of our own individual lives. It's why I say to everyone, you get to be the auteur, the writer of the screenplay, the costumer, making the you choose the cast of characters. You go choose which actors are going to play which parts. You're the director. You say, hey, you do your lines. Now you do your lines. That you do all of that. And this is all reality creation. Once again, we are mastering reality. We are mastering being able to express our own innate creativity and passion and emotional desires and consciousness, whatever we need to learn through the medium of the physical realm. That's what this shape embodies. When you see the red going around here at the periphery, that is the place where physicality, interacts, the physical realm. The forces and particles and consciousness and ideas and embodied people and organisms like you and me, we all live at this little red level. And then we connect here at this violet level, that's the 0th dimension. So we connect at the source of infinity, where we all come from, and here in the physical realm. But we don't actually connect in this other higher dimensional level. And I'll get more into that in level 2. So wait, I'm pressing pause and I have another animation to show you, but there's so many questions and comments. I want to get to that before I have to chop off for the level 2. Awesome. Okay. So back. Thank you very much. Jen is appreciating my shirt. So my shirt is definitely from my Living Rainbow clothing line. I've got the yoga pants to go with it too. Can't see because I'm sitting down, but you can check that out. It's on my Etsy shop. My Etsy shop is called Flying Rainbow Lasagne. So thank you for the free plug. And I love it when people order my stuff. Jen asks, I wonder if when you get a shiver, it's your DNA doing an FRL. I love that. So for me, the FRL is definitely, let me go back to my face so you can see me better. When I do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance, first of all, I'm doing it all the time. It's not like I only do it when I specifically concentrate on it. Very similar to the Merkaba, where you do it as a meditation, but that's like saying, let's say you get on a treadmill and you run 5 miles. Then you get off the treadmill. Your metabolism doesn't actually stop just because you got off the treadmill. You actually have residual momentum where you have an increased metabolism for sometimes hours after you have run on a treadmill. So I do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance. I don't stop after I stop doing the dance. My DNA continues to dance like a Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And this is the whole deal. It has been very challenging. I'm not complaining, but I just got to tell you guys, very challenging for me to integrate my energy and my music that I'm making with the rest of human society. And it's been like, because I'm always doing the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance. And for some people, It's too fast, it's too innovative, it's too unpredictable, it's too like they can't deal with the dance. And I had to kind of learn that. I had to be like, don't take it personally. This is my music, but my music does not necessarily integrate perfectly with other people who also might be distorted or have like a beat that's not a regular beat. Like they might have reasons why they're making their own music, but it doesn't necessarily integrate with mine. So yes, I'm always doing my Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance. It's easier to do it when I'm around other people who are amenable to that dance. To some people, it is just repellent. They're like, ah, it's like if you hear music that is like not music for you, it's like, get me away from that. It's not what I want. So the whole idea, like I say all the time, is practice your own instrument, become a master and a virtuoso, and then find the other wonderful collaborationists that you would like to collaborate with. You know, play good music with other good musicians. Don't try to jam with people who don't like your style. Don't try to gig with them if they're not gonna integrate with who you are. And definitely don't stop doing your own dance. That's my big, if you have one takeaway from this, it's keep on doing your own unique version. So I also, and let me just hold this up while I talk. I get wonderful stories from people that, you know, private message me and they'll say that they were doing their version of Flying Rainbow Lasagne dance and blah, blah, blah happened. I love hearing about it. It's like when people paint a painting and they're like, I used a paintbrush and painted a painting and this is what it came out like. I love it. I love to see what people are working on. And also because each genetic code is completely unique and each person's passage through time is completely unique. We've all been born in, you know, whatever. One person was born in Long Island, New York, and another person was born in like Colombia. So, you know, like everybody's born in different places. So it's not a one size fits all solution. This is like a template, like a thing that you can do, but then you take it and you personalize it to yourself. So all the things that I'm sharing, these are my particular ways of doing things, and they then have to be personalized for each practitioner, and then each person comes up with their own unique applications for it. So it can be unique applications for healing your own life, or the events of your own life, or healing the world from your perspective, because I also recognize not only am I a cultural outsider, like I'm new to this world, you know, from 20 for about 17 years, since 2001, that because I'm a, you know, a star person, I'm a galactic walk-in, that some people, they're like, you know, trying to, hold on a second, I need to drink water. Sometimes if they're going to do their own version of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, oh, never mind. So it's very hard. Sometimes it slips away. That's why I made that face. It's like, that train of thought is slipping away. Back to chat, and I'm sure it'll circulate back around. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Beth, interesting. She says, I dreamed of an angel doing this about 12 years ago. I'm floored. That is wonderful. Good confirmation. The FRL was like a cloak that it wore, not colored. It was golden in my mind. Yeah. So for me, the colors are color codings of different levels of reality. The Flying Rainbow Lasagna, the shape is what is important. And I got to finish up on this recording, but one other big takeaway is that when we transform this shape into this shape is the end result of essentially a big giant bubble of time that's been dimpled. And because it's a bubble, like the outside surface and the inside surface, they never communicate. Two little ants, one here and one here, they could never talk. They could never be in the same world or share ideas or information. But when we Flying Rainbow Lasagna, what happens is the outside becomes communicative with the inside. It vibrates that membrane of time into being something that is now, instead of, you know, a discrete barrier, it's now porous. It means now that the little ant from the past and the little ant from the future can communicate. That means established events from the past that have already happened and the potential for uncollapsed waveforms of events of the future can now communicate. Just what I was showing you with the idea of sewing through time with a needle and thread, or folding the fabric, folding the tapestry of time so that different events touch. These are the events of your life. So wait, get to the rest of the chat, then I'm going to press pause and I'm just going to go on to the level 2. We're going to talk about placing Flying Rainbow Lasagne in a higher dimensional reality and get to the other animation. Brandon asks, yeah, that's really good confirmation of the new shape. That's what Patricia was saying. Really good. Brandon asks, when the FRL oscillates, does it blur or appear to become semi-transparent like a hummingbird's wings? Yes, absolutely. So, and that is also that frequency, like if you or just like that Merkaba animation, once you get things spinning at a certain rate because of persistence of vision. Our system of perception tends to blur together these things that are moving at a very fast rate. And that's an opportunity for me to tie this all together. We are the Zoe tropes. We are the wheels of life. We've got these spinning wheels of energy in front of us that are called chakras. And the rate at which we spin has everything to do with what level of reality we are perceiving. And when we can fine tune that, that has everything to do with mastering reality. So you're asking wonderful questions. Jen says, opening up the Mobius strip. I like that a lot. Ron, this is wonderful. He says, FRL, dear future me. That is what a big part of this is about, connecting to yourself in the future, because we have a perfected version of ourselves in the future. And also, in order for us to travel through time and become that future self, we have to survive. We have to play the right music. We have to hit the right notes. So if you want yourself in the past to survive, you can call back over your shoulder. Hey, whatever you do, don't do that thing. Don't do that thing that's going to kill you. Don't make that horrible decision. Better make this decision instead. And you can become more and more adept at that, not only guidance, but nourishment. You can send inspiration and healing and uplift and nourishment to yourself in the past. And so one of the things you can do, you can imagine yourself in, like, the worst hardship situations you've ever been in, and now imagine yourself as the person you are right now, and that you are literally creating like a sewing with the needle and thread, sewing those two people together, and that you're able to send back in time inspiration, like, you will get through this. How about practicality? Here's how you can get through this. Do blah, 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 and you won't die, and you'll get through the hardship, and you'll make it and become me. Or a time when you were in profound health crisis, you can literally do that with Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And you can do it with people that aren't you also. Okay, Patricia says, can we literally change our past? When a memory comes up, I FRL with it and imagine a different outcome. Yes, based upon my consciousness now. That is exactly how we heal the past. That is exactly, and we do it on an individual level, and then we also do it on a social/cultural level, because we have like these reverberations from past that are coming through our instrument, our DNA of the present. We have all of these strings that are vibrating. Part of it is from ancestral trauma. And what we can do in this generation is be like, I don't like that note. That sounds really sour. That like trauma-based identity of victimhood. That sounds like a sour note. Let's get rid of that in this generation now. So you can do it as an individual if you've experienced trauma or abuse. And you can also do it as a culture. If you could say, like, I was oppressed as an Armenian in the Armenian genocide. I want to go back and free those aspects of emotion that have been tied to that torment, so that they don't have to be tied to that pain anymore. So if there are not any more comments just right at this moment, we're all going to still keep on being here. Let me just stop the recording for the moment, because my upload time becomes very long. Thank you to all of the excellent thinkers and participants that are here right now. And let me move on to level 2 so that I can get a little bit more into some of these ideas. Thank you very much. Okay. Hold on a second, doing technology.